Welcome to the Voice of Retail for the week of September 23rd, 2019. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. This episode is dedicated to John C. Williams, a retail legend, advocate, friend, and mentor to many, who left us September 21st, 2019. In this week's episode, an exclusive interview with keynote speaker and author Jeremy Miller on his new book, Brand New Name, a proven step-by-step process to create an unforgettable brand name. We talk about the inspiration for the book, the challenges it helps solve, and how individuals can take agency and ownership in their own branding process. Next, I chat with Nisha Oza, head of brand partnerships for Chinese Laundry. We talk live at the Global eCommerce Leaders Forum in New York in the Purolator Podcasting Studio and explore Nisha's personal and professional journey up to and including becoming one of the industry's leading experts on influencers and managing influencer marketing for this fashion-forward brand and online retailer. Lastly, I'll take a look at the retail news of the week, but first, let's listen to my interview with Jeremy Miller. Jeremy, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
Amazing. You?
I'm fabulous, thank you. It's great to be here. You and I met each other at the Retail Council of Canada's retail marketing event. It's a fantastic presentation. I learned a lot, and you know what I love about this business and doing these podcasts is how much I learn. No matter how long I've been kicking around, you learn something new every day.
Absolutely.
So you and I know each other a little bit, but for the listeners, tell us a bit about yourself, your background, your journey,
Sure.
How you got to where you are today, and let's start there.
Perfect. Well, it's a great starting point, Michael. So I have a non-traditional entry into the world of branding. So I'm a brand strategist and a speaker and an author, and what I ultimately do is I help people and companies grow their brands, and we do that through books and consulting and speaking and tools and other things. But my entrance into this world was non-traditional. And I started out actually in the world of sales and software sales. And in 2004, I joined my family's business. And I came on board as the director of sales and marketing, and my task was to grow the company. But at the time, I didn't know what was going on. We were a recruiting business, actually, and we were facing the early stages of technology disruption through Google and LinkedIn. They were changing our industry. And so we thought at first we had a sales problem, but it turned out it was really because of this disruption, we had a branding problem. When someone went online and looked at us, we looked like everyone else. And so my world into branding was being a sales guy who had lost his competitive advantage. And so I had to take that step back and learn the business and learn the market. And where my first book, Sticky Branding, came from is after I sold my family's business, I asked myself, what is the book I wish I had when I rebranded my family's business?
That's an interesting approach. Interesting.
So I took my story and I researched and I profiled over 150 mid-market companies around the world, and we created Sticky Branding.
And sticky branding is really kind of the essence of also what you talk about and the sessions that you run. And unpack that a little for us. What's sticky branding about?
So sticky branding is really that philosophy of how do you get a customer to choose you first. For me, branding isn't about logos or taglines or colors. It's really about that bond you form with your clients. So how do you get someone to know you, like you, and trust you, and ultimately choose you first? And if you think of any remarkable brand, Apple, Nike, Starbucks, any of those types of examples, they all have that first choice advantage. And so what I tried to understand in doing the research was, can anyone do this? And the short answer is yes, because it's very attitudinal. If you're willing to challenge convention, if you're willing to get really close to your customers and innovate and try and create immense value, then that work doesn't go unnoticed. You don't have to have you don't have to have a big ad budget. You have to do great work that people notice, and that garners you loyalty and connections, which then bolster and grow your brand.
You know what I liked about your presentation particularly was how the essence of branding doesn't need to come up from on high, written on tablets by a guru. It can be a collaborative creation, and in some ways needs to be a collaborative creation in the enterprises that you're in.
I fundamentally believe that. I would truly say the core essence to my approach to branding is how do you build your brand from the inside out? Because here's what I look at it from. These words brand and branding are packed with a lot of meaning, but they have baggage, and it depends on the marketer. If you're coming from an ad world or a data world, it's going to have different kinds of meaning. But for me, a brand is really based on what you have done, whereas branding is driven by what you will do. And if we're thinking about branding and what we're going to do, then how you can organize your team, how you can unlock their creativity, how you can empower them to innovate and serve your clients, that's actually where the brand building process is taking place. It's not based on the brand guidelines you set 5 years ago. It's based on what your people are doing today, tomorrow, and next week.
Well, all right. Well, that's a good segue. Let's talk a bit then about a new book. So you have a new book out. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I aspire to read more books than you have written, actually. So congratulations. It's a great accomplishment. Let's talk about your new book, Brand New Name.
Okay.
So I've had the chance to kind of look through it. I've had the opportunity ahead of the listeners to look through it. It's a great book. Let's start with the problem.
Okay.
And the problem is I was flabbergasted at the scale of the problem. Unpack that for us. How many new businesses are created each and every month in the world?
Well, in the world, I think it's going to be an astronomical number. But if we look at the data, just in the United States alone, 543,000 new businesses are started every single month.
Every month?
Every month. So over 6.6 million startups, mom-and-pop businesses to funded tech companies are being created every single year. And the fascinating issue that we deal with today, especially, so what Brand New Name is, it's a graphically designed branding book that focuses on naming. How do you name something? It gives you all the tools and process that you need to name anything, your company, a product, a service, even an idea. But the reason that this book exists is it goes down to the issue that you're leading to, Michael, which is we are experiencing a naming drought. The hard part of naming isn't coming up with new ideas. The hard part is finding one that's available. With the growth of new businesses, the growth of apps and websites and globalization, we are essentially copywriting or trademarking language, and we're having droughts in terms of available domain names, .coms, .nets, .orgs.
Because naming isn't, not that it was ever that simple to begin with. Because you'd all, when you came up with a name 20, 30 years ago, you had to think about how it, in different media, writing, print, whatever, radio, how it sounded, how it looked. But now you have to think of so many different dimensions, well beyond that, right?
And I think the issue is, will you be sued? Because it's one thing to be able to take a name and use it, but then we have these situations where other people are using it, and what happens if their marketing's bigger than you? Like you look at the challenges between the Beatles and their production company Apple, and Apple the computer company, or Pandora the music service and Pandora the jewelry company. They both have the same name serving different categories, so from a trademarking perspective, it's okay.
Right, in the trademarking world, that was the prime ability to differentiate. Look, I have a brand that has nothing to do with the other. Okay, you get a trademark for that.
Yeah, 32 categories you could fit within that.
Right.
The internet screws all that up now, so when somebody goes on and searches Pandora, which one are they searching? And so for retailers and dealing with voice search and things like that through Google and Alexa and Siri, we have this challenge now where the words we choose are intrinsic to how we are found.
That you make a great point. I want to come back to this whole strategy about the process, because I think that's really where the book shines. I mean, I found the book interesting in two ways. One is dimensionalizing the issue. You do a great job of that. And then the second is this process. So we'll get back to the process. But this whole part about voice search, and this is not the first time we've thought about it, but it's not like you have multiple options when you search for something even on a Google search results page on your phone or on a laptop or a desktop, right? You've got kind of one chance-ish to get it right?
Yeah.
Those results are going to come back. When I say, show me Pandora, what happens? You're going to get,
whoever's more popular.
Whoever is more popular, right?
But if you look at the issue of voice too, this is a key issue when we look at consumer goods.
Sure.
It's not every, but the majority of children's brands are misspelled names. Play-Doh, Slip and Slide, Fruit Loops, Rice Krispies. Like, think about everything we grew up with. They all are, like, Play-Doh isn't D-O-U-G-H, it's phonetically spelled D-O-H. Rice Krispies are spelled with a K. Fruit Loops are F-R-O-T, two O's and T. And so you have this, so when we are misspelling things so prolifically as marketers, and we've been doing this forever in terms of consumer goods, but also on websites like Flickr, voice search screws that up. So now, not only are we looking at the way we construct the brand, but also how people are interacting with it. We're adding these dimensions now that, from a marketing perspective, they're fascinating, but they're also frustrating because when you are desperately trying to find something unique that you can own, we have these variables that are getting in our way.
And there's all kinds of different companies and I guess different approaches to coming up with names, like created names. The pharmaceutical companies are brilliant at that. They just basically will create a name. My favorite naming story is Sucharita Molpour is an analyst with Forrester, was telling the story about how her kids came up to her and said, "Did you know that there's a river in Brazil named after Amazon?" And it was it made, it was so funny, and she was like appalled, of course, but it appalled, and she related that story that some of these brands can become so powerful that they take over and rename different things, like they become house names, right? And that's not a new issue, but it's so fascinating, and it's so different today.
Well, it's if you look at just Greek and Roman mythology, all of those characters, Zeus, Trojan, Ajax, Pandora, Mars, they're all trademarks now. We as marketers have gone and scoured the world in so many ways to just go and co-opt things. But if our advertising and our branding is effective, we can actually start to rewrite history. And so I don't know if there's a moral conversation on that, but it's some fascinating things that when you look at kids today, they're growing up with brands versus people, places, and history.
And Amazon is a good example of that. Great word, great trademark, A to Z, biggest thing. But now people are like, hey, there's a river named after that business. I love that story. All right, let's get into the process. So you talk about a 3-step process. And I guess at the core of it is co-creation. I mean, that's a big principle in all of your work. I love how it kind of follows its way through. But take us through this 3-step process that you articulate in the book, and that basically it's a guidebook, which is what I love about the book. So
thank you.
Take us through it.
Why don't I take a step back and tell you where we came to before we say where it is. So where this book came from was, if you Google brand naming, you will see one of my articles comes up 1 or 2 on Google. And it's been doing that for years. It was an experiment in long-form content writing, and I happened to write a long, well-written article on brand naming, and it started coming up a lot. And that got the phone ringing. At first, I was turning these leads away, not knowing what to do with them because I wasn't in the naming business. But when 12 people call you up and ask you to do work, you start to listen. And so I started doing the classic approach to naming. We're a marketing firm. Someone calls us. We do creative. We do the work. We do the research. And we give them the result that they're looking for. Now, that was fun, interesting work, but it was time-consuming. An average naming project would consume roughly 250 hours. But we had all this demand coming in. And so I was approached by a group of marketing investors. And they were
very difficult to scale.
Near impossible.
Yeah.
So a group of investors approached me and said, we love what's going on here. We love the data. This is the starting point of brand building. Long story short, we couldn't come together because we couldn't cost it right. But we kept seeing the demand coming in. And I started to look at the market and seeing, how does someone name something? They can either do it themselves, they can run a competition on crowdsourcing, or they hire an ad agency or a naming consultant. And I was frustrated just in my own experience with this, and I asked myself, there's got to be a better way. And so that led me on a journey to start exploring employee co-creation. And what I've come to believe is that inside every organization is this immense creative potential. We are all, as individuals, creative human beings. We're born that way. Now, we have that creativity potentially beaten out of us just because we don't use it. We're not confident in ourselves. We're too busy. But if we take a moment and step back, we can say we have the ability to create things.
So it's like the wisdom of the crowd, right? In other words, collectively, everyone is far smarter than anyone singularly can be.
And they're potentially smarter than the agencies because they know their business. They're passionate about the brand.
But they don't feel empowered. They don't feel like they have, speaking of they don't feel like they have agency to do it, right? They don't feel, look, I'm not an expert in making names. We better hire somebody who knows that, right? Exactly. They don't feel like they have that agency, so to speak, right?
You've nailed it. And so what the book is really trying to set out to do is to give you agency, give you process, and give you all the tools you need to take the people inside your organization to generate a name. Now, you can use the process well beyond that. You can use it for positioning and strategy. Sure. Inside your organization, if you take the belief as a leader that everyone is creative and inside our organization is this potential that we can use to harness and to solve problems, then you have exponential growth. So from what brand new name is a 3-stage process. Stage 1, build your strategy. In less than a week, you build a plan and develop your team to go on this journey. In stage 2, it is a 5-day naming sprint. And all we're trying to do is get a group of 3 to 10 people, or even extend it out to all the employees, to come up with 5 good names per day per person. So if you've got 10 people working on this process, that's 50 names a day. At the end of the week, you got 250 names. You've solved half the creative problem just by generating a bunch of ideas. And then in week 3, it's testing and selection. So we give you a set of tools and process to get through the trademark issue, to give you a weighted matrix in terms of evaluating names, and market testing process. And the best part of this whole thing is it doesn't cost anything. If you use your people in the process, then that's the extent of your cost. Now, there could be challenges in terms of scale and getting people involved, and that's where my services kick in. But fundamentally,
just kind of shepherd them along, basically. So, and it's almost like a coach. Like, you can do this.
Yes.
Right, and that's probably one of the biggest hurdles you might encounter is that it's listen, you're strong enough to do this work. Here's a process. I'm not sure. You're there to help them see that through, right?
Right. But we look at this too, that all the ideas, all the process, everything's given away in the book. My view is you should be able to take this, run with this, and not have to call anyone. Now, if you want to and you want that extra support, we're there, and we'll support with you with that, and you'll have that. But the benefit is where we can start breaking down silos and breaking down industry assumptions is the power of employee co-creation. Inside our business is incredible talent, and if we can give them structure and process and empower them, we can do brilliant things, whether it's naming our products and services, developing strategy, or just innovating and solving day-to-day problems.
Because everything's got to be called something, even project names.
For sure.
And that something has to have an origin and a story behind it to be powerful and to be successful, right? Interesting. Because it really, it gets back to the first comments of the first problem, which was with these 6 million businesses. There's no way to scale that in some kind of expertise. What you're giving is a solution to bring scale to that. So let's talk about some of your favorite brand names. Do you have favorite names that kind of ring true to you? I have a few. Yeah. So I'll start.
I want to hear what are your favorites.
So I one of my favorite names. I was with Black & Decker for many years. It was the Snake Light.
Oh yes.
And it was it came and went. It was a phenomenon 20 years ago, but it was so powerful in terms of it did what, like when you thought Snake Light, it just connected. And it's funny when you put those two words together. It was very powerful. The other one was again Black & Decker VersaPack. And VersaPack was a system of interchangeable, rechargeable batteries that went into like 10 different tools.
Right.
Versatile, and it was a pack. It was, these names just, for me, they just stuck, right? Yeah. I'm a Pandora. I was a Pandora, so I always loved Pandora just because it was a great name. In my career, I've come up with a few. So I worked of all places, at a cup company, Dixie Cup.
Yes. Did you come up with Dixie Cup?
I did not. That would have been a good one. But there's a couple in that category. Royal Chinette, which was the paper plates, right? Talk about a great name for a paper plate. Royal Chinette, right? It's the classic paper plate. The other, we created this was back 25 years ago. And there's this whole new thing coming out in coffee called cappuccino and espressos, and they had foam on top, right? This is, just a whole new thing. And, of course, all the lids that we made were flat lids. Yeah. So we had to create a lid that was like a dome. So we wound up calling it the Traveler, which I thought was one of the, as a trade name, just because what's going to happen with that coffee? It's going somewhere. It's a Traveler. You can stick it on the lid and you can not disrupt your coffee experience. So those are some of my favorites.
So unpack this for a second. What's fascinating in the names that you're are using as your favorites that stand out for you is you're gravitating towards what I would describe are suggestive brand names. Now, there's typically 3 categories of brand names that we have. Descriptive names, which basically say what it is. So TripAdvisor is a website for that. Netflix or vitamin water. Must be vitamins and water.
Sure.
A suggestive name is one that gives you an illusion of what it's going to be like. And an abstract name is something that is an empty vessel. Verizon or Singular, those types of things. So you look at Snakelight, it's if you've got a constructed word where you've put 2 words together to make a proper noun, but it gives you that experience of what it's going to be like to twist and turn and put this light wherever you want it. Same thing with VersaPack, where it's this versatile packaging for batteries. And so you can see the kind of names that they make you smile, that they have that. And we tend as consumers to gravitate towards certain types of things. So
do you have a preference in your process or in the book? Is it do you think one style or format works better than the others? Like, I can think of another brand I created, Culinary Distinction.
Yes.
Right? That was cookware, right? And it was it was meant to be distinctive, and it was, so it was very clear what it was all about, but tried to elevate.
So we need to be first and foremost adding you to all of our sprint teams for ideation. You're coming up with brilliant ones. So to answer your question, though, in terms of is there a best name, I'm actually going to argue fundamentally and aggressively that no. I truly believe there is no such thing as a bad name.
I can create the word Xanax or whatever. It doesn't mean anything. It's just really phonically something, but...
It could be that. It could be Purple Taco.
Whatever,
it could be whatever you want. Here's where names are problematic. Is you don't have the right strategy. So if you are trying to create a mature brand for, say, a baby boomer audience that is, say, life insurance, giving it a whimsical name like Purple Taco is probably the wrong strategy. But if you... And so really, there's no such thing as a bad name. There's a bad strategy. And that's where I really believe that we've got to understand... what are we trying to name?
So that's interesting because the strategy still matters. You just can't make up, the names still need to be anchored in the core strategy, which is your first phase of your process, right?
And so you take the example of Royal Chinette. You were creating a premium paper plate, and but it wasn't just a floppy paper thing. This was something you'd want to eat on. It's sophisticated. It's not picnic ware. You could actually have your wedding on it.
Formal. Yeah, that's right.
So you are and that could be extreme. But the same thing is, you had good brand positioning, and you chose a name to support that. And when the two things came together, it creates meaning and understanding, and it creates a story you want to share. And that's where I think where the mistakes do happen in naming is we go, okay, we're launching a product on say September 1st. Today is July 15th, and wait, we need a name by tomorrow, and now we got Purple Taco. And so this is it. We rush and compromise.
Oh, I've been in situations where you've got a project name, and the project name means X, Y, and Z, but it has some meaning to it.
Yep.
But it's a throwaway. But then at the end of the day, exactly that situation is like, geez, we got to name this thing. What about the project name? No, that's perfect. Let's just go with that. And you wind up with this crazy name that really was meant to be an internal name, but didn't anchor itself to the strategy.
You know what the best example of that story is? Bluetooth.
Really?
So Bluetooth was the code name for a special interest group between Intel, Ericsson, and Nokia when they were trying to create a short-range wireless communication device, so different types of technology communicate with each other.
Because it's named after some Norseman or something, right? Like some guy named Bluetooth, right?
King Harold Blatton. And Blatton
I love that
meant
you know that
Bluetooth.
fact.
It's in the book.
I love that you know that.
So King Blatton had a Bluetooth, and he was famous for conquering Scandinavia without violence. And so he was the perfect metaphor. And they figured, you know what, the marketing guys will come up with a better name.
Yeah.
And the marketing guys came up with PAN for personal area network. Like we have LAN and WAN, so local area network, wide area network, and why not personal area network? And the lawyers...
like LTG, right? LTG became this... Everybody knows what LG, 5G and all these things. They're not a name.
Yeah. So you just had the acronym. Well, the lawyers got their hands on and went, nope, that's not a trademark. No time. They went with the code name. But it's got this brilliant story.
But it still works. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating.
So sometimes the throwaway names become great ones. WD-40.
That was the 40th attempt at making the solution, right?
Exactly. And it was, I chatted with the folks at WD-40, and they said it wasn't a code name or something. It was just something one of the scientists had written into their lab book, and it just got picked up and used. And 50 years later, it's just wonder product.
Fascinating. All right, so let's talk about the book. Where can I buy? Where can I get a copy of the book? All the major places I would probably think of across the nation, right?
Everywhere where books are sold, you'll be able to find the book. And so the book comes out on October 8th.
Yep.
If you are listening to this ahead of time, we've got special promos going on. So if you pre-order the book, make sure you go to my website because we've got free prizes and giveaways where we'll give you the brand new name workbook, which gives you extra tools to name things. If you buy 5 copies, you'll get a copy of Sticky Branding. If you buy 300 copies, I'll come and speak at your event for free.
Well, I'll put that in the show notes and make sure people... So I guess that is a good segue to my follow-up question. How do people get a hold of you? Sure. What's your website and how do they get a hold of you?
I'm at stickybranding.com, but if you look at Sticky Branding anywhere, Google it, LinkedIn, Twitter, anywhere else, that is the best way to find me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, it's such a fun conversation. You're doing such great work.
Thank you.
Much success. I'm sure your book will be successful because it's a great read. And thanks again for joining me on The Voice of Retail.
My pleasure. Thank you, Michael.
Nisha, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me. We're here at GELF, the Global E-commerce Leaders Forum in New York, in the Purolator Podcasting Studio. So welcome.
Thank you.
Listen, why don't we jump right in? Tell us a little about your personal, professional journey, and tell us about the brand you work for and represent and all that great stuff.
Great. Well, hi to everybody listening. My name is Nisha Oza. I am currently the head of brand partnerships at Chinese Laundry, which is a women's contemporary footwear brand based out of Los Angeles. I'm from the Bay Area in California, born and raised in San Jose. I went to college in San Diego, and I, believe it or not, originally thought that my career path was going to be accounting. So my dad is a CPA, and he has been for, 20, 30 years, and so I guess numbers are in my blood. I was always great with numbers. Didn't really know what else I wanted to do in college. And so I was like, okay, I'll just be like my dad and become a CPA. And obviously that did not happen. So my career path has taken many twists and turns. I've never, ever been someone who was conventionally very book smart at all. But I've loved people. I've always loved fashion. I've always had a creative side to me. And a couple years after I graduated college, I was going through a series of jobs that were, to me, mundane. So I worked at cool companies. I worked at BCBG HQ. I worked at Gap HQ in San Francisco, a really dynamic company to work for. And I was in these big corporate roles, and I learned a lot, and it was a lot of Excel, and it was a lot of Outlook, and a lot of Microsoft Word.
A few meetings during the day, right?
Yeah, a lot of meetings that could have been emails. But I was very, very unsatisfied with my career path. And I kind of started tinkering with Instagram right when it was on the up and up, which was around 2012, 2013. So I was...
And how did you unpack that for me. How did you come across Instagram? There's so many things to choose. Why did you connect to that?
So it was interesting. Instagram at the time was purely a personal platform. It was nothing what it was today. There was the influencer scene was nothing like what it was. Yeah. Ads didn't exist. It was a way me and my friends shared photos of us and our parties and our boyfriends and our friends and dogs. I was working at BCBG HQ at the time, which was the first environment that I was ever in that really inspired me fashion-wise. The women there dressed impeccably. the chief of creative, Lubov Azria, still is one of the most chic women on this planet. She came to work every day dressed in the most beautiful outfits I had ever seen. The merchandisers, they wore heels, they wore leather, they wore amazing prints, fabrics. I had never been in an environment like that.
Right?
They really lived and breathed the brand. And I kind of started getting more into dressing, and my closet started growing. We had a great employee discount. I was buying a lot from our employee discount store. My friends started borrowing my outfits, and, they were like, Nisha, you have a cool eye. Like, you have a cool sense of style. It goes with your personality. And very organically, I started just throwing my pictures up on Instagram. And they started getting attention. They started getting more attention. And then before you knew it, I was talking to little boutiques, and they were saying, hey, we'll pay you $300 if you can post a picture for us and tag our boutique Instagram. Their Instagram at the time had maybe 50 followers. It was still really new. And then I I was slow, but I was like, this is something, connecting brands, connecting people, connecting bloggers.
Connecting to platforms.
Connecting platforms. And now it's funny when I look back. I don't think at the time I was doing it on purpose. I was just kind of doing it because
organically, right? It was just
very
doing
organically. It was just fun. And then there were younger girls that were my family friends that would reach out to me and be like, wait, I want to do stuff on Instagram too. And then I would connect them with boutiques. So I was like, I'm not really good at my corporate job right now. I wasn't really excelling, but
so to speak,
yeah. Oh, I didn't even realize I did that.
Sorry, Dad joke.
No, it was my dad makes jokes like that all the time, and I appreciate them. But I kind of just kept doing my thing on Instagram, and at the time I did not know what the word partnerships meant. I don't know if that really existed as a job then. But I ended up leaving my job at Gap, and I took about a year and a half to just figure myself out. And I took on these random little projects, and I would just meet a lot of different people. I stumbled onto some cool opportunities. I ended up doing a project for SoulCycle. They paid me a pretty handsome sum of money. I had 8,000 followers on Instagram at the time, which now is peanuts. But at the time, being from the Bay Area, I was one of the very few minority women that I knew who was doing anything remotely in that space. They were paying me a handsome sum of money, so I just latched
organically, you kind of found your way. Just organically, I just kind of found my way, and it was a big emotional struggle, and it was very up and down, and I didn't really have myself figured out. But after about a year and a half of that, I was like, okay, I think I'm good at this social media thing. I want to be out there. And by this time, the influencer scene was exploding. Everyone and their mother was an influencer. Perez Hilton had done her thing and kind of
definitely. Oh, yeah, definitely. Now there were just girls who were quitting their day jobs left, right, and center and just living and breathing in their Instagrams and just getting paid by brands really, really well to basically be walking, talking ads and spokespeople for them. And I applied to a lot of jobs, and I got rejected from a lot of jobs. I would apply to social media manager positions. They were like,
they couldn't figure you out, right?
They couldn't really figure me out.
You're not a community manager.
Yeah.
You're not a brand manager.
Exactly.
What are you? You're something.
I didn't have real marketing experience. It wasn't, so I didn't fully know who I was. And in interviews, people would be like, we like you. You're cool.
You don't know what quite to
we
do
don't
with
really.
you, right?
Where do you go? Who are you? And then Chinese Laundry came along, and I got the interview through a friend, and they hired me. And originally, I was just kind of doing social media, and I was the point of contact for our PR firm. We had an external PR firm that we hired. It's like a third-party contractor.
And at the time was, and we'll get to talk about Chinese Laundry a bit later.
Definitely.
But at the time was Chinese Laundry doing influencer marketing?
Yes.
So they recognized in you someone who was a practitioner, knew the trade craft from that perspective.
Yes,
right?
I think they were just like, okay, this girl, she doesn't have she's never run a real Instagram before, but she gets it. I think they just kind of took that bet on me. They were like, she gets it.
Really
she'll fit in.
Right? Because you can get a community manager, but if you haven't done it, it's difficult not always impossible, but it's difficult because it doesn't come organically to you about the trade craft, right? Because what we're now talking about, what you're talking about, is developing a trade craft around influencing, right?
Absolutely.
And then managing an agency who therefore is also managing and looking out for that kind of trade craft.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, my role at Chinese Laundry has grown to be pretty dynamic. People think it's this huge brand. It is not. There are 6 people on our marketing team.
Right.
That's
6
small
people.
for
right.
a brand that's at Nordstrom, Zappos, Belk, hundreds of boutiques all over the country, sold all over the world. We are the official sponsor for so many organizations because our founder is a very, very successful man and just, has his hands in a bunch of different industries. And so we're a very, very interesting company. But
so before you go on, let me just backtrack 1 second.
Yeah.
Tell the listeners who may not be familiar with Chinese Laundry. Tell me just a little bit about the brand. So you're a wholesaler, but you're D2C. But what product do you sell, and what's your point of difference and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. So Chinese Laundry, women's footwear brand.
Yep.
Been around for over 40 years, started by Robert Goldman in Los Angeles. He's one of the most brilliant men I know. He started it just completely grassroots, and it's grown into a globally recognized brand. So there are 4 brands under the Chinese Laundry family. So there's Chinese Laundry, which is our meat and potatoes. There's Dirty Laundry, which is our kind of edgy, younger brand. Sells at Journeys and that kind of genre. There's CL by Laundry, which is our very low price point brand. And then we have a new brand that we launched in February called 42 Gold. And that is a slightly more luxury, higher price point for the working woman 30 and up. Chic, but not uncomfortable. Not too trendy, kind of a good mix.
Not too fashion forward, so you can wear it to work.
Yeah,
for example,
kind of a
right?
good mix of fashion forward, but still classic,
Yeah.
and very sophisticated.
So you get different price points from opening price point to whatever, so you get different channels of distribution. Okay, again.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get back to, so you started there. What's your role there today? What's it evolved to?
Yeah, so my title is brand partnerships. With such a small team, what that essentially means is that I kind of manage anything forward-facing. So PR, influencer relations, celebrity relations, partnerships, co-branded events. So it's interesting because I do a lot of really little menial tasks, which are, just,
gotta do, right?
Gotta do it.
Especially in a team with 6 marketing people on the team.
Absolutely. Right? And then I've also had the opportunity to draft contracts with huge celebrities and host really, really awesome co-branded events and kind of build my own network and build Chinese Laundry's network. And I've kind of merged the two. And it's been cool. It's kind of the lifestyle that throughout all my 20s, I was like, I kind of want to do that. I just didn't know it. So
didn't know exactly what that was.
Yeah, it's great.
Let's stick on this point for a bit because I've interviewed influencers before. In fact, my last interview, I said, tell me about the trade craft, which you've kind of described as an influencer, and then tell me about advice for retailers. So you're in a unique position. What advice would you give to retailers and brands on how to work with influencers?
Yeah.
Because I talk to lots of brands and like we want to have influencers. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
What's your kind of 1 or 2 big pieces of advice on how to work with them?
So I think this is something that I think it's such a good question because it is so hard to not work in Instagram, work with influencers, and understand it. It is such a strength. My parents to this day, they cannot describe my job to anybody, any of their friends.
When the relatives call, they're like, "What?"
They're like, she pays her rent on time and she's safe.
Shoe company.
And she doesn't ask us for money and she seems like she's having fun on Instagram. So I think she's doing good. We don't really get it though. Beyond that, I don't know. You can ask her. You can talk to her about it. It is so hard to understand it if you're not in it. What I think the best advice that I will give to retailers leadership teams, C-suite, people that are, maybe a little bit more experienced and seasoned, and they're not on Instagram, they're not living in it. A lot of our leadership team, they don't have personal Instagram accounts, right?
Sure.
They maybe have Facebooks and WhatsApp, and those are kind of their social media tools. So biggest piece of advice with influencers, you cannot go into it with the mentality of, I am spending $1,000 on this influencer campaign, so I need to see a direct conversion of $2,000 on our website for it to be worth it. Because now the influencer scene is so saturated. There are so many people on Instagram. It is almost impossible to figure out what shoe, or whatever the product it is, what shoe is going to perfectly work on which girl and is going to perfectly speak to that audience, and all the dots connect. Because if you think about Instagram now and how built out it is, if I am just a consumer and I follow an influencer, she has maybe not hundreds, dozens of brands that she's posting for. My attention span as a consumer is now 0 because my phone is stacked. If that picture is good enough and that shoe speaks to me, and when I tap it, that price point doesn't freak me out, then that takes me to a product detail page link. Then that takes me to the actual website. Then if I'm savvy, I'm going to do a little research around the shoe. I might get distracted. I might Google a promo code.
It's a lot of moving parts.
My boyfriend might call me or FaceTime me, and then it is so hard to convert. So putting the expectation on your marketing team or your influencer relations manager saying, I'm paying you $5,000 for Q3. I want to see a direct $15,000 conversion out of it. Not going to work.
So how do you measure? And this is the other big question.
Yes,
right?
of course.
So all the retailers say, listen, I get, I was with Pandora Jewelry for running their market, right? So
did not know
that. Big influencer strategy.
Amazing.
So, but the question was, the executives asked, well, how we know it's the right thing to do.
Of course.
But we don't know how to measure its contribution for all the reasons you were saying. Now, we see a bunch of items. Is that because we had great TV ads, or that whole attribution thing? So what's your advice around thinking, at least around measurement?
So my thinking, and this has been my experience, and this is also my personality type. I'm kind of a person of extremes. I'm kind of a go big or go home kind of girl. So what I've seen, and the brands that I've worked with and worked for and collaborated with, the ones that have been successful in influencer marketing are the ones who pay the big bucks and take the deep dive and make a financial investment, and they keep making that investment, and it pays off after years.
So like you said, go big or go home.
Go big or go home.
Don't, because I've heard micro influencers.
Yes.
Right, which is very niche. But your advice would be go big, find the biggest celebrity you can afford.
Right. Pour money into it and think of it as a long-term brand equity and brand awareness play, because the days of being able to even perfectly measure conversion, they're just gone because there's too much noise.
Even if they existed to begin with, right?
Even if they existed to begin with. Even if you use promo codes, you can use all the affiliate programs in the world. You can use all these. To me, it's kind of just a bunch of noise. There is a brand, an e-tailer called Revolve. I don't know if you are familiar with them.
I've heard of
They are the absolute leaders in influencer marketing. Their entire marketing strategy, they have just taken the huge monetary gamble on influencer marketing, and it has paid off in a big way. Their leadership team is very young, very dynamic. They just went public. I mean, the entire crux of that brand is influencer marketing, and they have invested a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of work into it. So I think that brands, when they drop 10 grand here and try to pay one girl, they're going to be disappointed, is my personal opinion. So if you don't have the money, or you don't think that influencer marketing is what you want to put your dollars into, and you're a brand that is strapped for cash, my advice is really leverage micro influencers. Gift. Find creative. You can come up with a pretty easy micro influencer program in which you have a list of 100 girls or 1,000 girls or 2,000 girls or whatever your team's bandwidth is, and you just constantly send them shoes. And you say, for every pair of shoes we send you, you're going to do 2 posts. You're going to do 2 Insta Story arcs. The Insta Story arcs are going to be linked directly to our website, and you are going to promote the heck out of us. And there's really creative ways you can do that. I've seen brands do college ambassador programs. So they gift to girls that are 18, 19, a random girl, a pretty girl with 5,000 followers on Instagram, who's president of her sorority, Delta Gamma, at ASU. But guess what? When she posts those shoes, all the freshmen in the sorority, they want to go buy those shoes. Or if not, maybe not those shoes, but you bet they're going to see Chinese Laundry as a cool brand. So there's different types of influence. And a lot of those type of girls and those type of influencers, they don't charge. They're happy to get the wardrobe for free. Right? Yeah. I have 35,000 followers on Instagram, which is peanuts, but I get a lot of cool stuff for free. And I have this awesome wardrobe, and I love creating content, and I love wearing and putting together cool outfits. And it's a passion for me that kind of fits in and blends in nicely with my job, and offers me a lot of opportunities. And it's a cool kind of cross leveraging that I do between Chinese Laundry. Exactly, so to speak. So there are a lot of people out there who can create awesome content for you, marketing material for you, and promote your shoes. And then it's low risk, and it can, maybe the reward will exceed the risk, but...
Well, you've put on a clinic for Instagram marketing, both as an Instagram marketer and as a brand owner. So that's been amazing. Just as we kind of think about the conference, and let me get you back to global marketing. Tell me a little bit about Chinese Laundry from the business, and it's going global, and how do you go to market around the world, and what are your thoughts or lessons learned?
Absolutely. Chinese Laundry is a very, very unique company. We are not a mom and pop, nor are we corporate, nor are we a new up-and-coming cool e-tailer, nor are we an Instagram boutique. We don't fit into any of the categories of brands that you really see out there today. We've been around for 40 years. Yep. We are tried and true. We have some very, very niche markets that are loyal to us year after year. A lot of people 15 years ago, all their homecoming, prom shoes, sorority shoes. It's a very nostalgic brand for a lot of people.
Interesting. So contemporary yet nostalgic.
Yeah.
Timeless yet timeless.
Yes. We have the most sought after shoe in the pageant world. If you get a chance to listen to me talk, I'll kind of go more into that and how that one shoe has its own cult following. And just like a lot of the other brands that are being represented here, we are trying to figure out how to make noise in the social media space, in e-com, in international, when we, at our core, and what the meat and potatoes of our business is wholesale. And it is very, very hard, because when I am a forward-facing person and I'm on Instagram is made for consumers, right? But then you have these wholesale needs that you cannot ignore, because if wholesale is the crux of your business, it's our.
How do you market to the trade, right?
How do you market to the trade? How do you make sure when you go to a trade show it's successful and the buyers want to buy, and buyers for boutiques are different than buyers from Nordstrom. Buyers from Nordstrom are obviously different than consumers on Instagram. So we're a great brand. We have a lot of great shoes. Getting them out there and kind of figuring out what our voice is, especially when we have 4 brands under the Chinese Laundry family, which is great because we have something for literally everybody, every age, every woman, every ethnicity, anyone around the globe. You can find something you like. But cutting through all the noise and then figuring out who we are and figuring out how we can kind of protect like our tried and true wholesale business and keep our retail partners happy and keep those relationships fresh, and then also be a cool, forward-facing, contemporary brand. So we have a lot of different opinions internally. And we kind of put out a lot of different vibes externally. A lot of my friends are like, wait, okay, so you run partnerships for 4 brands or for 1 brand or like Chinese laundry? So, there's a lot of, it's a work in progress, just like any other brand. But I'm really proud of where we are now because we are, I think internally we are very aware of how much the retail space is changing, how much e-com is changing, how much social media is changing. And
the opportunities globally, right?
Exactly, and the global opportunities. And we're becoming very aware, I think, of how different the abroad markets are compared to ours. And it's very easy. I am a California girl through and through. I've never lived anywhere else. It is so easy for me to get caught in the bubble of, oh, this influencer is cool, this look is cool, this shoe is cool, but I'm forgetting about the Texas girl sometimes if I just look at it through my own lens.
Even in your own country, let alone
right,
trying to
exactly.
go global, right?
Let alone
the Canadian customer, for example,
is different.
She's going to be different in Montreal than Toronto than Vancouver, right?
If you look at the styles of shoes that our customers in Asia are going for, and forget Asia as a whole, right? China, completely different than Southeast Asia, completely different than India.
Sure.
None of those shoes are ever styles that I would put on an influencer in LA because they're not going to sell in LA. They're barely going to sell in America. You have to be really, really open-minded, and you just have to be open to change because Instagram, social, everything, it's just constantly changing, and it's never going to stop changing. The digital landscape is never going to stand still.
Well, I can't imagine someone better to help Chinese Laundry figure it out. You've put on a clinic here with me on Instagram and measuring that. I mean, these are the questions that brands and retailers are really, some struggle with more, but they're all trying to figure out what the future is.
Everyone's trying to figure it out, for sure. It's tough, but it's so fun. It's so fun, and that's why conferences like this are really, really important. I think I was talking to Kent, and he was saying that the other speakers that I'm speaking with later on in the day, he was like, you 3 are all so different. You're all going to be talking about such different things. I can't even wrap my head around it. He's like, I'm going to be having to put my brain in so many different directions. But it's great. Everyone brings something different to the table.
Nisha, if someone wants to get if listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out?
Like a true millennial, the best way to reach out to me is to DM me on Instagram. So my handle is the Fashionisha. TheFashionisha.
Well, listen, thanks for being on The Voice of Retail.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been great.
You're coming to Toronto later in the year, which is great. So
I am.
Hopefully we connect, maybe see how things have evolved since then.
Definitely.
And thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Well, all right. Thanks to Jeremy and Nisha for being my guests this week. And now let's hit the Highlights from Retail This Week e-newsletter. Biggest retail weekly in Canada. You could subscribe on retailcouncil.org, kind of a companion piece to the podcast. So I'll just hit a few quick things that happened in retail news this week. There's a great article on Clearly seeks to chart eye-popping growth, a few tongue-in-cheek, so to speak, titles there. That from Business in Vancouver. And if you want to learn more, it's a great article. If you want to learn more, there's a podcast interview I did with Clearly CEO Arnaud Boissier on the Voice of Retail podcast a couple editions ago, so be sure and check that out. From Retail Insider, Christian Dior opens the largest flagship in North America, Toronto's Mink Mile. I think they took over the Chanel space on the Mink Mile, which is on Bloor Street. So be sure if you're in town, check that out. Another an acknowledgement of Toronto's role in retail as the largest flagship in North America. So that's pretty impressive in and of itself. Some sad news this week with the passing of really a retail icon. John C. Williams passed away, the founder of J.C. Williams Group. I knew John well. I'd worked with him for over 20 years. A real gentleman and a mentor for many in the industry. He was the 2013 Canadian Retail Hall of Fame recipient for Retail Council of Canada. So a sad note on his passing, but leaves a fantastic legacy. So J.C. Williams, John Williams, left us on Saturday, September 21st. From Yahoo, Walmart betting on pricing for competitive edge in grocery war. So article there talking about what they're doing in terms of their launching online grocery in Montreal. And that means the service available every province across the country, and using and partnering with companies like Instacart. Amazon is opening another fulfillment center. So that makes 12 full fulfillment centers. This one's going to be in Scarborough on the eastern part of Toronto. So that will be their 12th, with another 600 full-time jobs, as they tend to be. The lawyers are in court this week for the disqualified Ontario Cannabis Retail Lottery winners from the second round. Unfortunately, that's held up the entire process, so hopefully that gets resolved very soon, because Ontario continues to fall farther and farther behind in terms of retail cannabis, so it continues to allow the legacy market or the black market to remain its foothold. Let's see, again, from Retail Council of Canada, by the way, if you're into GDPR, and this is kind of a timely note, there's a great webinar October 3rd if you're a member of Retail Council of Canada. Again, if your company is a member, you are too. Around the world, retail around the world, Old Navy about to set sail away from Gap. So there's a whole bunch of things going on as these companies start to separate and try to release the value that's within them. Old Navy generates, in this from Fortune magazine, nearly half of Gap's revenue and the bulk of its profits. Interesting, I didn't know that. Back to Amazon. Amazon launches Amazon Care. So Amazon really sees healthcare as ripe for disruption. And this is kind of perhaps a first indicator step. This is just for their employees in the Seattle area, but it's an interesting value proposition with basically home-delivered medicine, both from a pharmaceutical. Of course, they bought PillPack for, $750 million, 2018. And now the home-based medicine, so the doctor rolls to your house. First look at Apple's Luminous flagship store. There's some Fast Company, great pictures there. I was in New York City last week and took in all the action. I couldn't get near the place, so to speak. There was a long, long line, but what a buzz. What a happening place it was on Fifth Avenue. Probably 3 hours to get in, but it was quite the scene. And I look forward to returning to New York City and getting a tour of the mostly underground. So the cube is on top and the balance of it is underground. So sunken open air plaza looks fantastic. Rent the Runway, a little bit of a running into a bit of chop. Their customers are reporting some challenges. I guess they moved their distribution system or systems, and that's causing some hookups. So we wish the folks at Rent the Runway all the best in getting that straightened out. We know how gnarly those can be. That from Vox. From Fortune magazine, buy athleisure, Lululemon, and Athletica want you to live your best lifestyle. So just more talking about the success of Lululemon and Athletica, which is a subdivision of the Gap. So that's just continuing on the trend of athleisure. What else we got? Spotlight in digital retail. eBay's long transition in Canada into Rakuten. So that from Strategy magazine. Devin Wing, CEO of eBay, steps down. There's big news there, actually. Citing differences with the revamped board. The stock price has done well since he's been there, but eBay has struggled a bit. I think they're actually fallen behind in terms of total transactions to Shopify. So he has decided to go his own way. That from the Globe and Mail. Dark Store raises $21 million Series B. That's something I put in there from TechCrunch. It's interesting to see how different folks are trying to maximize and optimize stores or excess store space. We know there's thousands and thousands of stores being closed, particularly south of the border, or at least people need less store space. So this startup is interesting to check out. That from TechCrunch. And last but not least, will free same-day delivery boost Macy's online sales? We'll see. I mean, it's a big investment. Same-day delivery in 30 markets, qualifying purchase $75 or more. Boy, that's tough because that is not, unit economics there are not in your favor. All right, well, that's a quick wrap on this edition of The Voice of Retail. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, your favorite podcast platform. Please rate and review, and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of M.E. LeBlanc Company, Inc. You can learn more about me on www.meleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a great week.